I'm a natural politician. I can say one thing in the United States and think 5 minutes later and still have the same amount of integrity that I did before.
Guys, let's continue.
I'm gonna bring the big fish.
If you don't hate gay people, you like pedophiles. That's my political view.
What's gonna be your political?
Okay. So we are going to keep. Okay, so I told you about prevention of buffer overflow. Let's see another way to try and prevent this overflow, and it's related to the developing of the programs for the operating system. So here you've got an example with the OpenBSD. I mentioned OpenBSD previously, and it's an operating system. The idea is similar to Unix in a way, and the idea is that the developers in the group of OpenBSD, what they did, they like went over the code again and again and tried to debug it. Of course, it takes a lot of years to get into a proper product, but they actually did it. I think there is only one bug in this system, or well-known bug in this system. But compared to other OS, it's considered to be much safer.
Which OS?
OpenBSD, that's the fish there.
They just debugged it basically. Just debugged it in a manual way.
Yes, that's the old-fashioned way. Okay, so check. They went over all the functions that relate to C. They use say functions. That's the thing. Instead of using str copy, which I'm going to show you, I think in the next slide, they use the saver one, which is strn copy. And that's the thing. Okay. Please know that not all the save functions are supported by, let's say, Linux or Unix. Okay. So if it is supported by Windows, it's not necessary that it's going to be supported by Linux. So that's another thing that you should take into consideration when you do your code. Okay. Okay, guys. So let's look at the function now, and here we've got another example for a buffer overflow, but now it comes from the str copy function that I just mentioned. Okay, so we've got the buffer, and we've got the argument that we are going to copy to the buffer using the str copy, and the thing is that input validation is missing. How? So that I see it. The str copy don't check. Okay, it's going to copy each character and go on, and it's don't mind about the length of the arg that it gets. So you can easily get into a buffer overflow problem. Okay, so that's the thing. You can see, guys. You can see the the problem with the function. So the problem is in the specific function here. Okay, so we can add to the end of the buffer a 0. Remember that? The 0?
It's null terminated, so
Yes.
it never continues it.
That's right. So it's not going to continue. It's a null terminator, and that's way it can protect the buffer or the memory from the attack. And the question, but why this 0 at the end? So let's see another function. And could you tell me now what is the problem? We are using str and copy now, and str and copy also gets the length of the argument, not just the argument. So what is the problem now?
It copies exactly 10 characters and doesn't copy the null
The rest.
terminator? Doesn't copy the rest? Or
It copies just 10 characters. That's
so it doesn't care about the. It
okay,
doesn't
so there's
terminate.
no problem. No buffer overflow. 10 characters. That's the length that we.
It doesn't know when to stop.
Defined. What?
Another function wouldn't know when to stop because it needs a string to be null terminated, right? Meaning it would just go on. If you have a loop that's going to read the string, it's not going to know when the string is finished.
Why? 10 is the just 10. Copy just 10 characters from out to buffer. Okay, that's very good.
If you want to read the buffer again at some other point in time,
Yeah,
you can know when.
from another function.
I read the what's inside the buffer. So what I just copy to the buffer, that's what is
Are you going to know
inside.
what just its size is 101, but you only copied it?
What is the problem with buffer overflow? You see, we've got here a buffer, and the length of the buffer is 101, right? That's the buffer. We define a char buffer with a length of 101. Now we copy from arg1 10 characters, and then we concatenate another 90 characters. So we are still in the limit of 101, no problem. What could be a problem here?
I know that you're adding on those 90 directly to the end of right after the 10.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
How does
Give me an example of exploiting this code, like of getting advantage of the code. I'm just showing.
If the user
Try to think like.
if the user puts in null if the user puts in a null terminator in argv1, then it'll still concatenate argv2, but it won't read it. It'll think it's done after the null terminator, so it doesn't even get. It kind of skips the second argument.
Actually, now terminator is going to help. So, but it's not. Okay, guys. So let me just tell you. If I'm going to send to argv, okay, a string which is longer than 10. It is going to copy just the 10 first 10, okay?
Yeah.
That's it. Okay. It is going to copy them, the first 10. Then str concat will try to attach the last so-called 90 characters to the buffer. Okay. Of course, I can give something which is much longer, and you understand in a bit why. But where it is going to put
At the end of the buffer.
at the end of the buffer? What is the end of the buffer?
Blank.
You don't know, so it's going to search for what?
It'll get the information, the flag.
For a null, okay? So it's going to search for this null or zero, and it could be somewhere in the memory, of course. Okay, so it's not necessarily going to be at the end of the buffer. It could be, but it's not necessarily. Most probable it's going to be garbage there, okay? Because we didn't enforce null to the end of the buffer, to the first buffer. So it's going to check for the null and put the rest of the string there, okay? It's going to copy it there. If I'm going to give it a long string, it's going to overwrite the buffer and everything, and getting back to buffer overflow, okay? So, in order to prevent this kind of bugs, and you see still we are using now a safer version of the function, okay? It's not str copy, it's strn copy, and it's going to give us the option of using the length of the buffer, or the argument that we are going to copy to the buffer. Still, there is a way to exploit, as I just showed you, and that's why it is important to put a null at the end of the buffer. Okay, so we should use the same thing, and here you've got the explanation that I just gave you. Okay. Okay, so let's us conclude things that we learned today. So I showed you the buffer overflow attack. It's a quite common one. I think it is also highly popular. And in order to avoid the attack, we should use a smart compiler that will not execute everything that they get. Okay, they can distinguish between data and commands and so on. So that's one thing. Most of the compilers today are going to protect us, but as you know, there is no
Only a shell.
bulletproof or full protection. Okay, so that's the thing. Also, we can use ASLR in order to protect from libc. We need to filter and sanitize the data that we get, okay, and to make sure there are no NOPs or other characters that malicious software use. Also, firewall and input validation. I'm going to tell you about firewalls in more details, but you can think about a guard that we put in front of the system, and it's going to filter and monitor the data that we get and protect us from malicious input. And input validation, I'm also going to speak about it later. So actually that's it for today.
Thank you.
Any questions?